Before the motor car took over our lives, there was once a train that brought holidaymakers from the industrial heartlands of Manchester and Birmingham to the seaside. The route of the Pines Express took it to Bath, then up and over the steep gradients of the Mendip Hills on the Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway, on its way to Bournemouth and the sunshine. The S&D was jointly owned by the LMS and Southern Railway Companies, but had its own particular and independent character. In 1948 it became part of British Railways, but continued to go its own way, with little investment and few signs of modernisation. It was always worked by steam, and to some people the letters S and D meant slow and dirty. But most people had a soft spot for it.
The great thing about the S&D was that it was like an independent railway all on its own. Neither of its owners really had very much control over it, or for that matter really wanted very much control over it, and it was left very much of its own devices.
It was special in many ways to many different people, I suppose. In terms of enthusiasts, I think it's special because it has such a variety of rolling stock and motive power. So you had train spotters coming from all around the country looking at these unusual groups of railway engines from different origins, all working together over what is quite a difficult railway line. So the engines had to work extremely hard. They created a wonderful atmosphere for the enthusiasts. For the general public, it was more interesting for the fact that it gave a super route from the Midlands and the North down to lovely Bournemouth and the seaside.
But that wasn't enough to save it when mass motoring became all the rage in the 1960s. The railways were losing money, and the government wanted to cut them down to size. The Transport Minister, Ernest Marples, who just happened to come from the road building industry, appointed Dr. Richard Beeching, a senior manager at ICI, to do the job. Beeching had no experience of running a railway, but he knew how to read a balance sheet and soon identified the loss-making services. The notorious Beeching Report of 1963 proposed reducing the network by roughly a third, and the Somerset and Dorset was high on his hit list. The Western region of British Railways, formerly the mighty Great Western Railway, had an ancient grudge against the S&D, which it saw as an interloper in its territory. When it gained control of the line in the 1960s, the writing was on the wall.
The 60s were a mass period of the car, and everyone looked at the car, including the Transport Minister, of course, Marples, or Marples Ridgway, as you might call him. Yes, he brought in Beeching, and Beeching just did the job he was told to do, and he did it very well in terms of a technocrat. He produced what the politicians wanted at the time. Unfortunately, it did mean the end of lots of small communities and their ability to move around. They were forced into the car because the supposed bus replacements that were set up soon disappeared in many instances. Very few of them managed to survive in the status of which they were created, so everyone was forced into the car.
The end of the Somerset and Dorset came in 1966, when the entire line was closed.
There was a huge amount of bad feeling amongst the railwaymen and the local community about the closure of the line, which they reckoned was a put-up job by the Western region of British Railways just to get their own back on the S&D that they always hated.
The car was now the undisputed king of the road.
For most people that felt exciting, freedom of the road, the open road, until you came to the traffic jam.
Staff were relocated or sacked. The track was torn up, bridges were demolished and station sites sold off. At Midsomer Norton, the lovingly tended flower beds were lost among the weeds. The destruction of the S&D was complete.
It was a very sad occasion to see a whole railway, a railway that was like an island of people, just all of a sudden just been switched off, just died overnight, and a complete way of life for a huge number of people just disappeared in the flick of a pen, really.
Many years passed, but the line was not forgotten. Gradually it became a legend among railway enthusiasts, partly because it had been so well recorded by photographers like Ivo Peters of Bath.
Ivo Peters he was an extremely good photographer, but he was a fantastic networker. So he made friends with all the key people on the railway to give him access. In return, he gave a lot back to those people. All the photographs, he would send round an album of photographs every year to all the staff and then produce images for them on request. So he made wonderful friends with this line and added to the atmosphere that everyone felt that it was a family line and very friendly and warm to both internal and external faces.
He also recorded the line on high-quality colour film, preserving scenes that vividly evoke its final years and helping the legend to grow steadily.
It was early 1960s. Ivo Peters took an awful lot of film and photographs of the S&D, and the S&D at the time was bringing in a lot of locomotives to try and cope with the gradients. And as other railways started to get dieselised, I suppose, these other big locomotives were becoming available, and they came to the S&D and they tried them out. So there was all manner of locomotives that were being used here to a greater or lesser success. So from a train spotter's point of view, they had everything and its dog here to watch climbing up the gradients, and that was probably what made it so attractive.
People from all around the country know the S&D, what a marvellous railway it was, and how the Pines Express used to come through here every day, and from Manchester and Liverpool and places like that, straight down to Bournemouth in its heyday.
Over the years, enthusiasts have dreamed of a revival, but the task seemed almost impossible.
I was one when the S&D closed in 1966. I've no recollection of the railway. I've seen lots of the videos. There's obviously lots of colour footage of the line. I don't know, just something special about the S&D.
One of the long-abandoned stations was Midsomer Norton on the lower slopes of the Mendip Hills. In 1995, the Somerset and Dorset Railway Heritage Trust was formed and leased the derelict site from the local council. With very little experience, but plenty of enthusiasm, they set out to restore what had been swept away by Dr. Beeching 30 years earlier.
This started here probably 1995, something like that, so it was very late in the day. And I suppose to some extent we've had to struggle through it, and it's not been an easy time, but we're getting there. And you don't start building a big railway, you start building a small one and working up.
The site was a greenfield site. There was no track laid whatsoever when the society first moved in. So they've dug out the track bed down to the proper track bed from all the overgrowth and the fallen banks and things, rebuilt the infrastructure and laid the track and the signalling to boot.
Our first team all those years ago laid all the track here. You know, when I first came here, there wasn't any track at all. Permanent way, that was me. I love it. Hard work, very heavy, nothing's light, but it's great. It's good fun.
I love building railways, but to actually recreate this particular railway, which was so individual always, that was the great thing about the S&D, was that it was like an independent railway all on its own.
Over the years, we saved enough money to be able to recreate the signal box. Now, the signal box was fascinating in as much as it was part of the gardens at one point. Roses grew all over the signal box, and the signalman would sell the roses to the public and raise funds for the Bath Hospital. In doing so, the greenhouse next door was an extension of the gardens, of course, and the station itself won many, many gardening prizes over the years. So we have maintained that, not with the roses yet, although I think there are plans to bring them back. We think we've still got a remnant of the original rose.
The first few yards of track were laid in the station, and wagons, coaches and diesel locomotives began to arrive. As the collection grew, So did the number of new volunteer workers from all walks of life, freely giving their time to help rebuild a small section of the Somerset and Dorset Railway.
My background is I actually work for a telecommunications company, but I've always had an interest in railways. My father took me on trains and railways as long back as I can remember, and I've had a fascination with the S&D probably for the last 20 years. I came down as a visitor and it just seemed the right place to come down. Everybody was friendly and welcoming, so I put myself down as a volunteer, and that was 11 years ago now.
Come on, keep up at the back.
You're at the back. A few of us are here week in, week out. We do have a break at Christmas. We do have a break, but you know, most of the time it's 3 or 4 of us who are there every Sunday, and then the others come whenever they can. Obviously, it's not a paid job, but you know, we do. We love to do it. We like doing it, although it kills us half the time, but we like to do it.
Heritage railways, or certainly this one, rely on volunteers, and volunteers by definition are doing something for the love of it, and that means they've got particular things that they are passionate about. And the classic example of that is, just because it's a heritage railway staff with volunteers doesn't mean that it doesn't have to abide by health and safety legislation.
The society has grown. It's well over 1,000 members now. We have probably 100 or more working members. They're all a great bunch, and it's very positive. The town love us. We love the town. There's a good relationship building.
Well, we're very lucky here. The town council and the mayor recognise that we can be an asset to the town and want us to become part of the town planning and the town documentation, so that they have an understanding of what we're looking to achieve in the future, and they can help wherever possible, and they will help with grants as well as with getting behind planning permission.
With their backing, the preservationists grew in confidence and determination. As the work progressed, so did the skills of the volunteer labour force.
I've got an office job, so it's actually quite nice to come out and do something physical. Perhaps the weights can be a bit of a problem sometimes, but if we all work as a team, then that's not quite so difficult. But yeah, I like being in the outdoors.
Me, I just like getting my hands dirty on this. This is what I like doing. This is what I did on the railway when I was working there. I was on the permanent way, and I still love doing it now. It's heavy work, but it's just what I love doing. Passion. I don't know why, but that's it.
Around a railway, I think there's so much to be interested in at all sorts of different levels, whether it's engineering, whether it's natural history, whether it's views, whether it's selling tea in a restaurant car, running a museum or whatever. There's loads and loads of it. It's a bottomless pit of interesting things to do for the right type of person.
I was a teacher by profession, but I've always been involved in rail preservation since 1964, and that's an all-abiding passion and hobby for me. I love building railways, but to actually recreate this particular railway, it's lovely to not only rebuild part of it, but also to recreate that spirit of complete independence.
And that spirit is what has captured the imagination of a generation that never even rode on the railway.
I walked on it after it closed, but I didn't travel on it, much to my great regret. I came close, but I was 3 years too late.
So what is this strange force that drives the volunteers to rebuild the line and give so much time and effort to the cause? For most railway enthusiasts, the addiction starts early.
I was always drawn to signal boxes. They were sort of forbidden places with those notices on the door that said they were private. And that's, I suppose, to any teenager, that's a red rag to a bull. But I always found them fascinating, forbidden places, and what went on in them was a mystery. And I went to Nelson and Kayak Station, which had a lovely signal box. And with much fear and trepidation, I walked up the short set of steps and looked through the window. And the signalman, when he spotted me, I thought he was going to shoo me away, but he came and opened the door and said, "Do you want to come in and have a look?" And I was hooked from that moment onwards, especially when, after watching him work for about 10 minutes, he threw the rag at me and said, "Carry on."
Train spotting many years ago when I was a lad, mainly at like Bath Railway Station and Temple Meads, places like that, you know. Once steam gets in your blood, that's it, as far as I'm concerned. Been interesting ever since.
Shunting in Wheelsden Yard. It was just over the road from where I lived. So I went to sleep every night to the noise of ginties shunting wagons, which was quite a lovely sound, actually, of course, and it stayed with me for all these years. In terms of getting directly involved in railways, I suppose a holiday in Torquay was the trigger. I was a bored 14-year-old, and my mother bought me a train spotting numbers collecting book. And that set me off. I didn't stop from then on.
Well, different volunteers have different passions. Some are in love with signalling, some are in love with track, others want to work on the rolling stock, the locos, other people are here because they're passionate about the gardens. So you have to have a blend of people, and it's unrealistic to expect somebody who's mad about signalling to then want to get involved with the nuts and bolts of the financial side. Similarly, people who are good at figure work or good at marketing publicity, it's unfair to expect that you can give them a bag of spanners and ask them to repack the piston glands on the Sentinel steam logo.
We like volunteering here, we like doing it. It's a great challenge to build something, and you get a great sense of achievement to try and recreate something along those lines.
But above all, it's about people, and recapturing the camaraderie that made the old S&D so special.
My uncle, actually, he was a fireman down at Radstock on the bankers down there. And so in the early day, when I was a youngster as a junior, he did take me up on the footplate from Radstock up to Vinegar and back. Wouldn't be allowed now, of course, anything like that, but it was a thrill then in those days, and quite an experience.
The railway was a linear family. All the old railwaymen that I remember in my youth that I spoke to who worked for the Great Western Railway, for example, you ask them about their memories of the railway, and it all comes out in terms of personalities. It's all people. And they don't only know the people they work with or work for them, but they know all their families as well.
It was known as the family line, I think, wasn't it? And a lot of background to the families, the men and their families that worked on here. Sometimes out in the middle of nowhere, but were looked after by the loco crews and the guards bringing their provisions and dropping them off in the middle of nowhere to them. I suppose the way we've continued it is that there's always that feel about the place and the traditions of it, and there's many of the enthusiastic people here who want to try and recreate that.
On the site here, people talk to one another. It's about people and getting on with other people. We're finding getting a lot of people coming into railway preservation who have done nothing in their lives other than sitting in front of a VDU screen in an office, and absolutely love to come along and do something where they can see at the end of the day. It may be hard manual work, digging a hole or something like that, but they can see at the end of the day actually something tangible that they've achieved, rather than just move a cursor across a TV screen.
And if you want hard manual work with a real sense of satisfaction at the end of the day, nothing beats extending the railway.
1, 2, 3.
By hand.
It is very heavy work, because obviously you think these pieces of rail is a ton, and the sleepers are 1/4 ton of each. So the whole weight of that track panel, you're talking something like 8 or 9 ton, and that's what we got to try and shift in bits and pieces.
An awful lot of dedication and sweat and toil. Unfortunately, the train spotter generation is passing on quite quickly now. We're all getting into our late 60s and early 70s, and how much longer we'll be able to lug sleepers about and that sort of thing is a moot point.
It's amazing what they've done, yes, and it's a bunch of very dedicated lads that have laid the track by hand all the way up as far as they can possibly go at the moment.
One of the things with Heritage Railways, it does attract retired people because they've got more time. They can come down during the week, and obviously people like myself who've got full-time jobs can generally only come down either on a day's leave or a week's leave or at the weekend. But we have encouraged a few younger volunteers in recent years, and today we've had one of our volunteers is 18. And he's very good, he's keen, enthusiastic, and of course he's probably a lot fitter than most of us are.
Having the right tools is essential, whether it's a humble crowbar, a power saw to cut the rails, a drill to make the bolt holes, or a rail-mounted crane.
It can lift a piece of rail, move it from A to B with ease. With our sleeper beam, you can lift up 4 sleepers at a time, move it to the rail head, and then we move it on forward. We carry on like that. Each time we put in a panel on a track, it's a case of lifting over 20 odd sleepers, get them in place, bring the rail up, get it cut and drilled, and lift that into place. I mean, without that machine, we would probably be nowhere near as far as we are now.
It's a basic law of railways that everything is heavy and doesn't care if you get hurt handling it. So you have to know what you're doing and work as a team.
On all the railways, everything's heavy bar the pay packet. And that's what it was even when I was on the railways.
Which is why it's so useful to have that crane. When it's not lifting rails and sleepers, it can help by handling the third basic ingredient of track laying: ballast. For every 60-foot panel of track, it takes roughly 20 tons of stone ballast to hold everything in place. Once the track has been roughly laid, it then has to be straightened and levelled.
This is the operation today anyway, is to slew it over to give it an alignment which is going to suit the engines and the coaches. And of course it's got to be in line with the rest of the track as well, you see. Otherwise, when the coach goes over or the engine, they will feel a violent jerk. It's not very nice. And then of course, this is what we're doing today. We've got to do all this plus beyond as well, which is going to be a lot of work and it takes a lot of effort. The trees do help with the winch, because obviously we've got nowhere else to anchor the winch to, just where they got good roots. And as we go forward, we try and use as many trees as we can.
We've got a very experienced permanent way manager, and the track is put down to a very high standard. You know, we don't cut corners with how the track's put down, and we've got some good quality materials we've bought, and we've perhaps paid a little bit more than we could have done, but we've got, you know, good quality sleepers, partially worn rail, which is perfectly good for 25 miles an hour.
25 miles per hour is the speed limit that most preserved railways need to comply with to operate a passenger service. Although the Trust currently restricts speeds to 10 miles per hour, safety is still the key factor that will satisfy the inspector that you know how to build and run a railway. And when you start running trains, safety means signalling.
I'm signalling a down train out of the down platform. Unfortunately on our railway, the down direction, which is away from London, is actually uphill, which causes endless confusion. So this is the down platform starting, and followed by, we have another starting signal a little bit further out, which is called the advanced starter. And this signal is released by the tablet. I've got a tablet out, and it will allow a train to go onto the single line section. I'm interested in anything to do with railways, but the signalling has always been my particular beef, and as a result of that, probably I have an enormous amount of experience of working signal boxes. I've probably actually worked upwards of 100 signal boxes all over the country of various different types, completely illegally over the years. It's something that you can't possibly do today. For a signalman to allow somebody into his signal box and to work it today would be a hang in the fence, you know, at the very least.
In the modern electronic age, mechanical signalling like this is fast disappearing from the main line. It's a system almost as old as the railways themselves, using levers, cranks and rodding to move the points, interlocked with signals worked by levers, wires and pulleys.
There were 37,000 signal boxes in this country at the peak, which would have been just after the First World War. And a signalman was regarded in the local community as being more or less on the same level as a doctor, so socially speaking, in the social pecking order. The signal box is an ideal place with the telephones, and in a country box, the long period between trains, where people could talk to one another and communicate to one another and knew one another and had time for one another. So the signal box not only represents a different way of operating a railway, but it also represents a completely different social system to what we've got today.
Eventually, enough track had been laid for the railway to start giving rides to the public, helping the finances and widening its appeal beyond the dedicated enthusiast market to the family just wanting a fun day out with the kids.
It's good when you have an operational day and people are really pleased, and particularly for the children, some of the longer heritage railways, an hour and a quarter, even half an hour is perhaps 20 minutes too long for a youngster's patience and concentration. So 5 or 10 minutes up to the end of our railhead is actually quite good for some of the younger families.
In my past, I've been a marketing director for a publishing company, so you can look at what goes on at a heritage railway and realise very quickly that for many of the members, they think everyone who comes here is a railway enthusiast and a fan.
Any passengers with unchecked tickets, please? That's it.
In reality, the majority of people who come and travel with us are local and they're families. They're coming for something entirely different, so they don't really care if the benches are not quite the right shade of green. They want to come along, have a ride, and in fact they don't want a long ride, they want a ride that will keep the kids happy, but then they want to go off and have an ice cream and buy something in the shop and go to the buffet car, so they're looking for a rounded package.
Should do it.
And for most visitors, that package needs to include steam. Joyce is a Sentinel shunter. She's an unconventional machine, but similar to a pair that once worked on the Somerset and Dorset at nearby Radstock. Her proud owner is Andy Chapman.
When Joyce came here in 2004, I took one look at her and I thought, what on earth is that? Having never seen anything like it before. Because as a non-enthusiast, if you like, I hadn't seen the Radstock Sentinels. I'd just seen these big things with rods on the side. That's how I became the owner of a steam locomotive. It was never quite within my life plan, I don't think, but it's quite good now that I've got it, and it provides endless millstones around my neck and entertainment for the rest of my life, probably. When it's cold and has no fire in it, can come to life. Then when it moves, it's working almost like a human being would. It's got heat in it, it's producing energy and there's power, if you like, and the ability to pull heavy loads and make a great fuss and a commotion about it at the same time. And here at Midsomer Norton we've got a heavy gradient anyway, so it's a very good place for any steam locomotive to be put through its paces. As you can see when we've been going up and down the track here, she doesn't hold back. She's only little, but she's got a lot to say for herself. It's a great little line for Joyce, actually. Being an industrial shunter originally, she was never made for long distances and high speed, but short distances and heavy loads are her cup of tea, really.
And Joyce seems to enjoy hauling them. But to accurately recapture the S&D passenger services, something much bigger is needed. The first taste of greater power came in 2013, with the visit of Henbury, a saddle tank engine that once worked in the Bristol docks. In 2016, the railway borrowed this Midland tank engine, known as a Ginty. It's a type that regularly worked the line before closure. The next visitor was bigger and far more powerful, a British Railways standard Class 4 tank of the 1950s. These were also a familiar sight to S&D passengers, and, complete with 2 matching coaches, it created the perfect time warp. Suddenly, it was as if the line had never closed.
When we were teenagers, we used to come up here and get the specials down to Bournemouth for a trip down with the rest of the lads and, have a good time down there and come back on it. In those days, of course, this line was very busy during the periods, the 50s and that, when full expresses were going through here, the Pines and everything else came on a Saturday. The Somerset and Dorset was very busy in those days, and that was sort of a normal for us.
After a short holiday in Somerset, the Class 4 had to be returned to its home in North Wales. But its visit had offered a glimpse of the future, and the volunteers at Midsomer Norton are confident of securing their own mainline locomotives once essential facilities have been established. Every preserved railway needs an engineering workshop to restore and maintain the equipment, much of which is well past its sell-by date. Most railway hardware has a tough outdoor life in all weathers, so steel rusts, timber rots, and everything needs constant attention, from signals and point rodding to wagons, coaches and locomotives. The rust needs to be removed. Wasted metal must be built up with weld. And anything that can't be restored has to be replaced with new parts, using a range of specialised machines. At Midsomer Norton, the former goods shed now serves as a small workshop. But for the future, something much bigger will be needed.
Consolidating ourselves and our situation, we need to build some stock cover. So we've bought a parcel of land already, just to the south of the station. That's called Somervale Sidings, as it will have 2 sidings at least on it, plus a 2-road shed. The next requirement will be a longer and larger shed. That would probably allow for 3 long roads and maybe a painting bay as well. We may be able to have an engineering facility which could be available to local education, and also possibly road access to that, so that would be very, very useful indeed.
Meanwhile, the track-laying team are pushing on southwards to the next station down the line at Chilcompton. The first mile has been fairly straightforward, but then there's a big and very expensive barrier in the way, a long cutting that was filled in after the railway closed. It leads to a short twin-bore tunnel. The rest of the track bed to Chilcompton is overgrown, but easy enough to restore. The station has long since vanished, although, as with the signal box at Midsomer Norton, it can be replaced. But the mountain of earth facing the track layers, before they can even reach the tunnel, presents their biggest challenge so far.
And hopefully we'll get through that cut-in and through to the other side. But that's got somebody with a very deep pocket with a big shovel.
Which means becoming increasingly commercial. This is a process which the more successful preserved railways have already taken on board.
All these organisations are going to be much more professional as they develop. Some are extremely professional at the moment. I don't know quite where that's going to end. I don't know whether they're going to become completely corporate or whether they will retain that sense of enthusiasm and excitement that we all have as amateurs.
It's a finely balanced operation, giving the enthusiast an authentic recreation of the old Somerset and Dorset, while still appealing to a mass market and not dumbing down the attraction in the process.
That means from a publicity perspective, you're always considering you've got 2 markets. You've got to cater for the enthusiast who is interested in what's hauling the train and where the coaches came from, the provenance of the brake van, and you're also looking to cater for the day tripper family person who just wants a nice day out for the children.
And that means having a range of other attractions. Midsomer Norton has its own museum, located in the former stables. Here can be found a whole range of items telling the story of the S&D, from signs, lamps and signalling to tickets and luggage labels. There are reminders of its 2 former owners, the Southern and LMS Railways, and the vital role played by the S&D in wartime. Close by is another reminder of those dark days. It's a small fortified position known as a pillbox. Today, it's home to what must count as one of Britain's smallest museums, evoking life on the home front during World War II. Back at the station, there's a shop selling a range of books and souvenirs with a welcoming fire in winter and ice creams in the summer. And of course there are refreshments. But this is no ordinary cafe. It's a luxurious first-class buffet car, which the railway bought from Virgin Trains for just £1. It's their most modern vehicle, but parked next to it and hidden under these tarpaulins is its oldest, a wooden-bodied Victorian six-wheel coach of the 1800s.
I was fortunate to have a serendipitous moment of coming across a railway carriage body in a garden at the time that the owner was moving house, and they offered it to me for free. I hadn't been working on carriages for 10 years at that time for various reasons, and I suddenly got the urge to start again, and this was the trigger. Hunting around for a home for this in rather a compressed timetable, I settled on Midsomer Norton Station. I knew one or two of the people here already from previous occasions, and they very, very kindly offered to give me a home for the carriage. When you are given a railway carriage body, you think, yes, great, 5 years, maybe 10 years at a pinch, I can turn this round easily. It took 2 years to find wheels for it, but we were fortunate in finding the right wheels for it. We found a chassis that fits it beautifully, a Midland chassis for a Midland coach body. In terms of my timetable, that's slightly slipped. We're halfway through the project and it's taken 10 years so far. Now we're hoping we're on the long half that we've done so far. We're hoping the short half is to come. We've stripped it back to its basic skeleton. There are now 5 of us working on it. It was just 2. In terms of our plans for restoring it, we intend to restore it to its original state, which was an oil-lit 5-compartment third-class coach. It was designed for and built by the Midland Railway. This particular one was sold off to become a cafe on the 8:30 just outside Exeter, and we hope that it's got a future, a long future.
Restoring these derelict bodies is a huge challenge. One railway that has made a success of doing so is the Isle of Wight Steam Railway. Their work is an inspiration to Steve and his team.
We had a wonderful time at the Isle of Wight, looking over their splendid stock of houses and hen houses and sheds that they'd got I think they must have about 30 different coach bodies. Going back to the 1860s, I think they do. They've put back, I think, 6 or possibly 7 of these on wheels already, and there's a rolling programme to do possibly 1 a year, I think. They've got a fabulous collection. I'm so impressed with what they do, and they are a leading light in coach restoration.
This remarkable survivor could well have run on the Somerset and Dorset over 100 years ago. When restored to its former glory, it will offer visitors a rare chance to sample Victorian rail travel on what may by then be a substantial railway. But hard choices will have to be made first. To the north lies the town of Radstock. Getting there will mean replacing 2 big and very expensive bridges. However, this viaduct of 5 arches still survives, marking the point where the S&D once crossed over its arch rival, the Great Western, now also just a memory.
At the Chilcompton end, we have a tunnel cutting to dig out. It's about 1/4 mile long, and we don't know what's in it yet. That would take us to Chilcompton Tunnel, where we would have to negotiate access to one of the tunnel bores. It was a twin-bore tunnel. That would take us through to get very close to Chilcompton village.
If we could get through to Chilcompton, I think that would be fantastic, by removing the cutting where it was filled in and up and through the tunnels and having a run round at the top. I think that would be tremendous. It would give us about 2 miles of track or something on a heavy gradient, and I think Joyce would love it.
It may all sound like a pipe dream, but other preserved railways have proved that it can be done at a price. In Sussex, the once isolated Bluebell Railway has relayed 6 miles of track and shifted its own mountain of spoil that was blocking a cutting. It took a long time and cost a lot of money, but the Bluebell is now reconnected to the national network.
It can certainly be put back, and even the main railway companies, of course, are building new lines. The preservation movement has done massive improvement to their origins. They have shown what can be done, what could be done.
On the S&D, we do our own thing. That was always the spirit of the original railway, and that's very much what we have to do today. And that is one of the great appeals of rebuilding the Somerset and Dorset.
We do it for the passion of it, we do it for love. We want to see it back down, and that's how we do it. We may struggle at times, but we'll get there in the end.